discuss Sylvia Plath as a confessional poetess. The term confessional, invented by Professor M. L. Rosenthal, professor of English at New York University. In confessional literature, we may place works which are very personal and subjective account of experiences, beliefs, feelings, ideas, and states of mind, body, and soul. George Moore's Confession of a Young Man and St. Augustine's Confessions are the best examples of such literature. Sylvia Plath's literature also breathes in the atmosphere of a heightened personal myth, yet it generates disturbing responses that are more appropriate to realistic account of suffering. The reader can legitimately wonder whether she has created a fantasized self dramatization. Know thyself and write about thyself. You are. Become the best knower of the whole mankind. Confessional novel is a rather misleading and flexible term which suggests an autobiographical type of fiction written in the first person and on the face of it is a self revelation. The author seems merely assuming the role of another character. Sylvia's bell jar may be placed under this category, where the whole story is her own. She has clearly revealed herself through the characters of the novel. We have a glimpse, even in the most private affairs of the life of Sylvia Plath. That Sylvia relationship is quite obvious in every time. Sylvia's desire to have an orgasm is there in the novel through the character of Esther. According to G. B. Shah, the man who writes about himself and about his own time is the only man who writes about all the people and about all time. What is an orgasm? Orgasm is feelings at the level when one is at the peak of one's sexuality, or we can say that it is the height of sexuality. Now come to the point. In confessional poetry, especially lyric poetry, is confessional in so far as it is a record of a poet's states of mind and feelings and his vision of life. Such poetry reveals the poet's own sense of pleasure and pains, visions and revisions, desires and dreams, and so on. The work of Sylvia Plath are the best examples of confessional poetry. Plath speaks with confessional honesty of her judgments, test tube, infatuation, her story notes, her cake baking, her dreams and her fears, stating from the age of 12 onward till a few days before her death by suicide at the age of 30. The depression that was endemic in her father's family troubled her during her junior years. When her mother sought treatment for her, she was given bipolar electroconvulsive shock treatments as an outpatient. Sylvia is a confessional poetess. She wrote too much about herself and her art in addition to her thoroughly subjective, intense, and emotional poetry makes Plath's work difficult to interpret. It would not be wrong to say that Plath wrote as she lived, never caring to mind contradictions and oddities. She just went on recording what she felt and experienced. The personal and dynamic demands are felt in a full and large sense in Plath's poetry, both in feeling and thinking. Plath was never satisfied with the word because she wished everything and everybody to be as she would have them. Plath wrote confessionally because her depressions and rages, her restlessness and of feeling of entrapment seem appropriate reactions, at least to a degree, to her family situation. After Nicola's birth, Sylvia faced the true clue of Hugh's infidelity, expressing herself through increasing angry poems. She would not tolerate male irresponsibility living with the children. Plath wrote many of the confessional poems. In Ariel, Plath has communicated her own experiences, personal feelings, subjective ideas, and her beliefs in terms of horses and horseback riding. All demonstrate a desire to have her reader feel, if not see, the unities of the interconnected emotions which she is attempting to express in her poems. In Plath's poem Arrival of the bee box stands for her innerness at the time of composition of the poem. The box is temporary, means the suppression of her feelings within herself can't be tolerated forever. They will have an outflow through her poetry after some duration. Plath's poem, The Bee Meeting, is also a good example of confessional poetry. The bee poems assess Plath's relation to her neighbors, children, husband, other women, and herself, as well as her place in history. In Plath's Poppies in October, beauty is living beside death. The poppies are under grim horror. The men are hostile to beauty, thus hostile to poppies. She resembles herself to poppies as poppies are unwanted comparatively to roses. She is undesired by the people around her. Morning Song seems the most logical expression for Plath's enigmatic relationship with her parents. She remains psychologically dependent and victimized by both of them. She says for her mother, I want as ever to grab my life from out under her hot, itchy hands. Plath was deprived of sympathies on the part of her parents. In Plath's poetry, women are seen as the time creators of life, yet they are for subject to the psychological tragedy inherent in the biological circle. They are continuously subject to loss of blood and potential life of vitality virtue of the demands of pregnancy and childbirth. Jasper Myrie says, poets and kings are not born every day. Sylvia, in her poetry, creates a floating sensation and alienated role in her own experience of the world. An important feature of confessional poetry is that political and cultural criticism centers on the individual as the victim. The private life of the poet herself, especially under cultural crisis, making the poetry at once private and public, lyrical and rhetorical. Lowell's Shrunkor and Plath's Lady Lazarus are the best examples of fusion of the private life, and these are culturally symbolic. Confessional poetry is not just an expression of private discomfort, a sort of catharsis on unburdening of private grief. Speaking of Plath's confessional poetry, a critic says, at her best, however, Plath is in control through form and shape of her materials, which are never allowed to get out of hand as mere natural self expression. Despite the first person narrative appearance, the poetry of Plath is not purely autobiographical or personal. The experience narrated in the poem is more than personal. It transcends to the cultural, the occasionally flows into the universe. P.B. Shelley says, the most wretched men are cradled into poetry by wrong. They learn in poverty what they teach in song. Writing is in itself something akin to suicide, as Hegel says. The birth of the text is the death of the author. The similarity of the two acts, writing and suicide, is a striking similarity. The moment an idea is put on paper and published to the it is no longer belongs to the writer, just like the soul which cannot return to the body after leaving it. The death wish has always lurked behind class confessional poetry, and that is what distinguishes her from other poets of the some denominations.